Hey y'all, welcome back to Twin Oaks Family Farm. So we are doing a little bit of work here in the meat bird barn. My husband Jared and myself, we are sort of expanding the brooder pen into a growing space for the birds. So actually lots of changes. Right at the moment, all of the birds are sort of shifted over to this north side of their building, and then there's one group of them that went over to that east doorway and hanging out there. So you actually see kind of a variety of supplies in the pen right now. So some of the basics, some of the basic stats. This is a group of Cornish rock cross meat chickens. Let's try to get the camera down here, like right beside them. There are 433 of them here. They are 12 days old. Got one right here we'll try to get a look at. So day one is hatch day and move-in day. We get them from a hatchery. We get them from a hatchery in Southwest Ohio, Mount Healthy Hatchery, and we're in Southeast Ohio, and they actually travel here through the United States Postal Service. So we start with hatch day being day one, the day that they move in. And this group, I think, is here for about 41 days. Our hatch date was September 4th with them, and our processing date is October 14th. So this is cool. What y'all are seeing here is their very first experience and interaction with these larger feeder trays. This is a set of homemade feeder trays, very simple to make. I'm going to actually defer to my husband Jared on give us a little description of how you made those. Now, before you do, this is undesirable that the birds get in them and on top of them, but at this age, it's kind of hard. Well, I guess at any age, it's hard to prevent them doing that. They've had these baby tray feeders, so obviously those have kind of a guard. They stick their head through to get the feed, so when they stand on it, they're not actually in the feed. And the problem with them being in that feeder is waste. They'll end up kicking some of that out. Hey, Jared. They'll end up kicking some of that out. It's a little wasteful, but I'll put the camera back down on the birds in the feeder. But if you tell us a little bit how you made the feeders, we'll share that with the people.
Well, I just had a piece of 4-inch Schedule 40 pipe laying around that was that length, so all I done was cut it in half, and then I made two ends for each one and just screwed them in the end, and then just put a block on the bottom of it so it was up, so it would hold them.
Yeah.
So that's all. It's really,
Very
if you got a piece of scrap PVC pipe laying around, it's very easy to make and cheap.
Yeah.
Like Musta said, it's the only thing we don't like about it is they do get up on top and they do waste a little bit when they are moving around on it, because it'll
And
the feed out.
At this point, that's kind of a transition maybe from the baby feeder trays to the bigger bird feeder trays, which I'm going to zoom the camera sort of on beyond where Jared was standing. So those are the bigger feed dispensers, and I forget, Jared, we had a number on those. Do they hold about 40 pounds a piece in those bigger dispensers?
I think something like that.
Okay, and so then I wondered if you would move the birds and kind of see if they'll move and shift over this direction some. So as far as looking at the camera, y'all can probably get a sense of where their brooder space has been is basically where the majority of the birds are laying down and hanging out. We had a temporary wall kind of running from myself to where Jared just was at that left-hand side of the doorway that was really confining the birds more or less to that space. So we've opened all this up in the middle section of the building because they're growing. So we're really moving from their starting phase to their growing phase. And they basically, as you can see, had grown to the point where they're really filling in that space between them and the space they take up and the space that all their little feeders and these waters took up. They were filling that space. So they're ready for more room. So Jared's walking around in them, just moving them around. And in this case, moving them around is basically going to shift them over so that they come over here, and experience using some of the space. Jared, did you see him at the feeder that you've already moved? So looking at the camera view, y'all can see the furthest feeder. We'll zoom in a little bit on that. So as those birds, that's why we wanted to move them away from the wall and across the pen. As they shifted in toward the middle of the pen, they found that feeder. And then same thing's going to happen here. And that's exactly what we want. So we want them to get kind of an imprint in their memories of they did get feed from these little trays. Now they can also get it from this set of trays. And so then, then we'll be moving them into the bigger feeders as well. Also, we've just put those waters, the large waters down in. So this is also like first experiences and interactions with these waters. And they're really doing well with those, I thought. So Jared and I had just cleaned those up, just soap and water and sunlight. And we'd had these in here. So they were getting to where we've got 20 of these, Jared, and we were keeping minimum 10 in the pen, and we were filling them, we were approaching 4 times a day, filling 10 at a time. So at least 40 gallon of water for the 400 birds, at least, daily. So right now, we've got 6 5-gallon waters, so that's 30 gallon of water. So we would expect, that to almost last them a full 24 hours. We might have to refill it once. And we have 4 more of those waters.
Yeah, 4 more. That
we will add in. And so we would actually, that's pretty cool, Jared, when you moved them, how they really went to those feeders.
Yeah.
But we would expect, as they grow, just even another week probably, Jared, you think we'll need to give them the whole space?
I would say another week you'll have to have the whole area.
Within about a week, we'll want to give it all to them.
If we keep having the temperatures that we are, probably, and you can see we don't use the heat lamps now, but we do at night. Probably within the week, we probably won't have to use them at all. I would say they'll, we keep having the temperatures that we are. We just use them at night right now.
Yeah.
To help them, and some of them do use them, but you come in, like this morning, there were several that were out from them. That were just comfortable because they're growing. This group is growing really well.
Well, and they're growing, and they're sharing body heat because they're in a confined space. They have plenty of space, but they're still confined to a specific space, so they are sharing body heat. And I've talked before about how as they manure on the bedding material and it absorbs that manure load actually puts off its own heat, doesn't it?
Yes.
So that, those factors also impact, like they may be able to find warm spots in the pen, not necessarily under the heat lamps. But we've also raised those heat lamps a good deal, haven't we?
Last night we raised them probably 1.5 feet.
Yeah. So,
I would say.
They were suspended lower so that they were closer to the birds when the birds were younger and needed more heat. And then as the birds are growing, they're able to thermoregulate more on their own as well. So we can actually lift those lights, not having suspended quite as low too. So anything else you think, Joe, that's important? Like we're looking at 12-day-old Cornish rock cross meat birds. One thing I have been wondering, do you have a count on how many bags of feed we've used?
No, I don't, but they're all over there, and we've used several. These guys are really eating a lot of feed.
Would you think we're using 50 pounds plus a day?
We're using close to it because this morning we just opened that 50-pound bag over there, and it's well over half.
And we'll actually probably finish using that bag today.
Yes, because these little feeders here are almost empty.
Okay.
So yeah, by the time we fill them, it'll be almost empty.
So do you think that as we're finishing up here, do you think we'll go ahead and take the baby feed trays out? Do you think we'll go ahead and put any of the silver feed dispensers in now?
I think we'll put some of them in. I think maybe like a couple over there we'll put in, and maybe a couple over here, but until they get used to the different feeders, it's just like the waters, they're just now really going up to them, where we had all these small ones in there, and we filled them this morning, and probably half of them
at like 7 a.m., 7:30 a.m. we filled them.
And probably half or a few more than half were
totally empty.
We're totally empty since
by 1 o'clock
and
in the afternoon.
So whenever I started putting these waters in, they weren't sure of them, but I noticed now they're starting to come up to them and recognize what it is, and so they're using them more. So that'll be the same way with the feeders.
Yeah.
You know, we may not take all the little ones out, but we'll put a few of the silver ones, the metal ones in,
Yeah.
and just kind of transition them.
Yeah.
And then once we get the big waters in and the big feeders in, it makes our job a lot easier.
A lot easier. A lot easier. What did you say this morning? We come in and we saw all the baby feed trays were pretty well empty, and they had pretty much all of them in the pen, all 20 of them. They had at least 10 of the waters in the pen. Most of them were empty. And you said, do you remember what you said? You said, they're ready to graduate. We're ready to graduate to the big feeders and waters. Because like Jared said, with these, you know, we've got to dump those trays, clean those trays, unscrew them, have them upside down, fill them, put the tray on, flip it back over, set it in the pen. It takes a lot of time to do that. With these, you know, we can clean the tray out, and that's a little bit time consuming, but to fill them, we just fill a bucket and drop it in.
Like this morning, there were 4 of us.
There were 4 of us.
There was Melissa and I and 2 of the boys, and Melissa and I was in the pen. I was gathering waters, she was gathering trays. One was filling trays and one was filling waters for me, and we were just going back and forth. And
how long did it take us?
It probably took us 20 minutes to a half hour.
Hour at least.
For 4 of us, but usually, you know, well, in the mornings, our youngest and our oldest and I myself are all leaving about the same time.
Through the work week, like 5:30, 6 a.m. Y'all are all out of here.
And then so our middle son, he don't go to work till a little bit later, but that just leaves Melissa just to do the trays and all. And so I'm sure it takes her an hour.
Honestly,
a day.
most of the time it takes an hour for the morning choring when they're in the baby feeders and waters. So, well, on the one hand, I always think when they're little, it's not a lot of work, but then as they approach this 2-week point, when we're still in the little supplies, that's when it's most labor intensive, probably, it feels like. And then when we get over to the big feeders, big waters, it feels like a real labor reprieve, because it's so much easier to fill these. It's so much easier to fill those big feeders, because you just dump the feed sack in. And with these trays, we got to, you know, by hand, 1 little pound tub at a time.
Also, though, with the little waters and the little feeders, you know that they're eating and drinking.
Yeah.
If you're having to fill them all the time, you know that they're getting the feed and water that they need.
So that's the problem you want to have.
Well, yes.
Is filling stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then, you know, as they get older, yes, you're filling big feeders and big waters all the time, so you know they're still. But when they're this little, you know, that's an important part of knowing that they're eating and drinking.
And you know, I've told viewers, like we've talked about, could we install automated waters, automated feeders? But that's something you and I have talked about. Yeah. We know we could meter the automated stuff somehow, but something that really is nice from just a statistical standpoint or data standpoint, when you have manual feeders, manual waters, you know how much they're eating. And even like us, like now saying, well, you know, exactly how many bags have we put in? Well, we need to double check that count. But still, we know the pace that feed is being consumed at, and we know that pace is normal. Yeah. So we know, you know, we're on target. This flock is on target. And man, are they growing, Jared?
Yes,
they're doing great.
This group is really growing.
Really, really great. So the other struggles in the barn right at the moment, I think, are we doubled the number of crates that we have. So we had the storage on the wall for the crates, and that just fit the amount of crates we had. So that's one thing right now. We're trying to figure out how we're going to store the rest of the crates. But again, that's a good problem to have, because it means we have enough transport capacity in crates for the amount of birds we have. So any viewers out there, feel free to, in the comments, you got a storage suggestion on the crates, shout it out, put it in the comments. We'll take a listen to it. Any other struggles in the barn? Oh, this wall, Jared. Yeah. What are we trying to accomplish? You want to tell the people
we're just trying to do
what we're trying to accomplish here?
Well,
okay.
It's really not a struggle. It's me getting the time to do it.
well, that is the struggle.
What we're wanting to do is the same thing as we have there.
Okay, so like these, we need a panel. So tell me what that panel is.
Well, it's just all it is just 2 cubisexes and wire stapled to it.
What's that wire called? Hardware mesh? It's not hardware mesh.
Yeah, it's like a hardware mesh. It's not chicken wire.
No.
But it's I'd call it a hardware mesh.
But you do need to make sure the holes are small enough. Your birds aren't going to go through it or get, a wing stuck through it or something like that. We have to watch even using these crates as temporary walls. We have to make sure they're setting the right direction when the babies are chicks, because on the shallow side, there's a hole that they can actually get through and they can get trapped inside there.
We know that for a fact because this group here,
we had it happen.
We had 2, we heard them chirping, and here they were inside the crate, and really, the only way they could have got in was through this little hole right here. And
when they were like day-old chicks,
yeah,
they could get through here.
That little hole. So
can you believe that?
That's something
it's crazy. So you got to make sure whatever you put into your incorporating your chicken housing that they aren't able to get through it. So I think right now we're taking the baby feeders out. Taking all of them out?
No,
we're going to leave some of them.
I think we'll leave some.
Let them eat them empty, maybe.
Yeah,
and then take them?
Because there's some feed still in them.
Are we going
to say let them eat them empty?
Go ahead and put a couple silver ones in?
Yeah, we'll put a couple of them in here and
okay.
Get them started on them.
Do you, I don't want to rush you, do you want to put a silver one in while we're recording, and then we'll kind of finish up on that? But and what's the temperature today? Last I saw was 80 degrees Fahrenheit. So 12 weeks old. That's
right now it's 84.
80. Okay, so that makes sense, because I was thinking at this age they really probably want about an 85 degree Fahrenheit ambient temperature. And so like right here, these birds are great, they're doing good, but see how we're seeing just the very beginnings of like a panting behavior. Okay, so they don't want it any hotter, they don't want it any warmer. They're very content.
Yesterday it was 90 degrees.
Yesterday was 90 degrees.
Yeah,
so that was probably just right, but we don't want it, they don't want it any hotter than that.
And for really for our area, for the middle of September, that's kind of odd.
Kind of hot. But we've had drought. We've had high heat this summer. In fact, under a burn ban, total burn ban round the clock. No, no bonfires for recreation, no burning debris, total burn ban, because we've had drought conditions throughout Ohio. So this is great, like just showing you, that's great. You can put almost 50 pounds of feed out, just lickety split like that. Jared's gonna do that other one, and then we'll be shutting this video down. But the birds are doing great. We are running one fan. Thanks, Jared. We are running one fan back in that northeast corner, just moving some air around, and it feels good to them. But with these doorways, we got a great breeze, and that's why we do want to get a complete panel put into this side, the north side, because this panel that's in there only extends one door width. So we want it to go across the entire doorway. But with all these doorways open, I don't know how to describe that, Jared. Dramatically improves how it feels in this building. Like the temperature feels 5 degrees lower than outside.
Oh yeah, just the crosswinds. That we can have these here going east and west, going the doors open. But normally when we are able to open that north door, north and south, we get a lot more air.
Oh, it just feels
through.
So good.
And the nice side is the north side of the building, shaded.
Trees.
So it's a little cooler, and it comes through the building. It does feel really good.
And I think flocks tend to hang to this north side of this little building, and maybe that's why. Maybe that's why, because of all the shade out there on that side. But anyway, we're real pleased with this flock. They really are doing super. We're 12 days in on about a 6-week start to finish production schedule for poultry here, and we really appreciate y'all join us again, and continue to see the practices we use to take meat chickens from start to finish in about 6 weeks. God bless y'all.